we are live. Thank you for joining us for this press conference today.
Good afternoon. The mission statement of the Bermuda Housing Corporation is to provide accessibility to adequate, affordable housing and promote independent living to enhance the quality of life in Bermuda. In order to be able to plan adequately to meet that mission, we need current data. There has been virtually no increase in the amount of affordable housing stock for at least the last 7 years, and even less attention paid to maintaining the current housing inventory. As such, there is a dearth of housing inventory to meet present needs. We currently cater to 500 families in both BHC and privately owned accommodation, and another 180 families accommodated in rooming houses. But with an ever-increasing demand, we lack the capacity to help more families. So today, the Ministry of Public Works and the Bermuda Housing Corporation, in conjunction with each other, will launch a basic online survey to ascertain accurate numbers of those families in need of housing presently and in the future. The Bermuda Housing Corporation is committed to providing access to adequate and affordable housing and is determined to gather input from all Bermudians who also consider housing a priority. The goal is to identify what people need in terms of affordable and adequate housing for rent and/or purchase for themselves and their families. The survey has been designed to broaden the understanding of the issue of affordable housing in Bermuda and the accommodation needs of Bermudians. We are painfully aware of the struggles that people face regarding rents and purchasing units in the open market. Additionally, there are challenges and circumstances that prevent some from being properly and sufficiently housed, such as unemployment, underemployment, low income, access, and availability of units. The objective of the Bermuda Affordable Housing Survey is to identify key issues that will assist the Ministry of Public Works with strategizing and forward planning to meet the need. Accurate data is the key to being able to provide what is needed, so I encourage everyone to participate in the survey so that our plans and actions going forward will address the needs of the Bermudian people. The survey can be found online at www.affordablehousing.bm and will be available until the end of April. Once the data is collected and analyzed, we will either confirm or adapt the current action plans to address the need. As is our custom, we will publicly report those findings and plans. Thank you.
Questions?
Yep.
Would you say we have a housing crisis at present?
Crisis is a strong word. I think that there is a dire need. We, on a regular basis, are seeing families who are reaching out to the corporation, and in many instances, I think some have given up hope. And so the data that we currently have, we are having a raging debate regularly, with the management, about the number of families that are in need, because I believe that the numbers are too low. And that's not just based on a gut feeling. That really is based on the fact that in a number of instances, people reach out directly to the ministry. And so the Housing Corporation is the only vehicle I have in order to provide affordable housing. And so when I come to them, they report, no, they haven't come to us. And so part of the belief, I think, is if they actually get to me, I have a secret supply of housing that I can provide them with. That clearly that's not the case, and that the Housing Corporation is the vehicle that we would use to provide affordable housing. For me personally, and many in the corporation who've been here for a decade, this is very much deja vu. A decade ago, when I had this responsibility, we were in the same position. No housing had been built, and very little of the housing that existed had been maintained. And so over the last 7 years or so, particularly under the last government, the same situation prevails. And so The requirement for housing, I think, goes in swings and roundabouts. When people are employed, then there is less of a demand. When they are unemployed, then they beat a path to our door. And so we are trying to get a handle on what the accurate numbers are. And so it's important that people participate in the survey because that allows us to plan. We have some plans. We have some fairly dramatic plans that I really would like to launch and get going, but I don't want to do that in a vacuum. We want to know what the requirements are. And when I talk about affordable housing, that really is critical because what we are seeing in the corporation is that families are deciding what they can afford and requesting that type of accommodation. So in other words, if there is a family of 4, a husband and a wife and the children of either sex, they are looking in the main for a 2-bedroom accommodation. That, in our opinion, is not adequately housing people because you don't want to put boys and girls together. What they need is a 3-bedroom, but they cannot afford it, and so what they're asking for is a 2-bedroom. And so where we're headed is adequately housing families so that you don't have the myriad of other social problems that come later from not providing proper housing for people. Now, I will also add that we carry, and this came up somewhat in the budget debate in terms of the amount of money that we carry in arrears. And presently, I don't remember the number of families that it affects, but they're in the hundreds. It's about $2.1 million. And that number doesn't fluctuate at all. It stays there. And so, and we expect that it will stay there. And you will find that your experience, if you look back over history, we don't evict people for non-payment of rent. We do not evict people for non-payment of rent. We evict people who will not adhere to the payment plans and agreements that they have made. We also do not evict families that have children. We don't put them on the street. We will take them out of the housing that they have been neglectful in meeting their commitments and transition them to the rooming houses. And that's a whole different conversation and a whole different concept because that's about a decade as well. And we are finding a myriad of other challenges with that type of accommodation. And so we are looking at best practice internationally about how we can transition from the way that we're doing things now to a better model so that we don't have some of the other social challenges that we have by putting those numbers of people together. So it's a long-term plan in terms of addressing the wider need, but immediately what this will allow, the survey results will allow us to do, and it's a one-page survey. I didn't count the number of questions, but about maybe 10 questions that people need to answer. What that will do is give us a real guide in terms of modifying what our plans are or confirming where we're headed. And as an example, this is probably the longest answer you ever had in life, isn't it? Okay. As an example, we believe that the greatest need, based on the data that we currently have that I think is suspect, that the greatest need at the moment is for single one-bedroom accommodation. What we don't know is whether that is for single individuals or just a couple. And in not knowing that, we are unable to be able to say that that's the direction we really should head in. And so what this survey will do will provide us with that data. And then we'll be off to the races in terms of how it is that we address that. We do have some plans and some work going on at the moment, but it's very small in terms of the number of units that are going to bring online, and we would like to expand that dramatically. But we want to get the numbers right, and we want to be able to address the need that we're currently facing, and so people can help us. And so what I would ask those folk in the country generally who may have lost hope and are deciding to do other things, but if they genuinely are in need of affordable housing in Bermuda, that they participate in the survey. And if they don't have access to online, they can do that at the library, or they can ask, you know, as many of us my age, ask the younger folk to do it for you, and they'll be able to fill in the blanks for them.
Affordable housing, what would you consider the criteria?
Well, I don't want to go there because I don't want people to start making decisions in their lives. If I say a one-bedroom should go for X, and they say, well, I can't afford that, so I'm not going to participate. I really don't want to go there. What I will say is that we probably are going to get the same sort of criticism we got a decade ago from the private sector, that if we actually build houses and are able to provide accommodation for folk, the price of some of that more expensive property will come down. It's the nature of the beast. We live in a capitalist society, and so they must modify their behavior. I can also tell you, just as we're not completely down that road yet, but we are going to do, you'll know that we announced in the throne speech that we're going to do something about housing in the city of Hamilton. I can tell you that we had a meeting today with a private developer as well, who's very keen to develop some housing in the city of Hamilton. Now, that's just for our information. But what I can say is the fact that if the private sector does develop housing in the city of Hamilton, that helps us because it takes the pressure off guest workers in the main from competing in the local market for housing. And so it'll help to provide accessibility as well as to bring the cost down.
Airbnb, has that taken away from the market?
Not in any real way, I don't think. I think that because that goes in swings and roundabouts, and again, we have no data. I've been talking to the Minister of Tourism about that because that falls under his remit. We have no real data, but if, you know, it goes in swings and roundabouts. And so some of the people, I can tell you, that have entered that market have found out that, you know, it's not as sustainable as they thought it was. Because, you know, you could have a tenant, you know, a guest for the 4 months of the summer, and the other 8 months, you know, you're struggling. And so what I would say to folk who are in that category and who are looking to have a more long-term commitment and income is to look to us, because we still rent private sector rental properties. We do not pay market rates. We have a set rate that is applicable to 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. But there is the guarantee that BHC is the tenant. We will sort out the tenant if they're a bad tenant and replace them with another one. We will guarantee your rent on time. And we will return the unit to you at the end of the period of our agreement in the state in which we got it. We are seeing a marginal increase in that regard. Because some of the challenge with people who have vacant units and are not inclined to rent them is they've had horror stories for tenants. And so we are able to eliminate that burden from them, particularly in the case of seniors, where I've seen a number of seniors who have a property, have seen these sorts of exchanges, and have reached out and said, explain this to me again. Because they've had horror stories, and the fact that the corporation will intervene on their behalf if there's a tenant who's not playing by the rules, and replace that tenant if necessary, and that we're the tenant, they're coming on board and trying to help, and so we're seeing a marginal increase, and so hopefully this will help to see some others reach out to us and have that sort of exchange.
Right, we want to allow some other members of the media to inquire. Renee, do you have any questions at all? Dennis from Burch, do you have any questions at all? Right, okay, thank you.
Right, thank you.
For joining us this afternoon.